My name is DiMouro. Alport syndrome has been a part of my family long before I was born. The disease was passed to me and my sisters from my father, Henry DiMouro. After fighting Alport syndrome for 55 years, my father passed away. He's not here to share his story now, but there's someone who can. My mother, Margaret DiMouro, stuck by my father's side through some of the hardest and most painful days of his life. Together, they faced Alport syndrome. This is their story.
Actually, my sister introduced us. We had just gone out one night, and she introduced me, and we just hung out, and then he invited me to a family barbecue. We had had just a really good time, and so at the end of the date, he had to leave to go on dialysis. He didn't want to go, and I didn't really want him to go, so he asked me to go with him. So we went into Boston. He was on the third shift. He had to be in there for like midnight. But within like 10 minutes of being on the machine, he was out cold. Treatment was really hard. It would cause the person to itch from the inside out. The only way to tolerate the treatment was to give them not only Benadryl, but liquid Valium. So they would be pretty much unconscious for the entire treatment. When he got off the machine, I realized how sick it made him. And I couldn't even imagine him being able to drive himself an hour home from Boston in the morning traffic. After that, I decided to just start driving him. Then I would, just sleep on the bench in the lobby until he would get off the machine in the morning. And then sometimes if he was feeling okay, we'd go to breakfast or something. But I ended up doing that for the first year that we dated. Total, he'd been on dialysis for 35 years, which exceeds the length of time that most people survive on dialysis. One of the things that the doctors had told me is that they really don't think he would have lived much longer if I hadn't been taking him in for the treatments. And it was a little bit after that, we were planning to get married, and so we were going to put the dialysis machine in our home so that he wouldn't have to travel back and forth anymore, and then he could just have it in the house, and I could put him on the machine and be right there with him. If he was sick, he didn't have to travel. He could just rest until he felt better. But literally the night before we were supposed to start the training for me to learn how to put him on the dialysis, we got a phone call that they had a kidney for him, which totally shocked me because I didn't even know he was on the transplant list. Next thing I know, we were driving into Boston, and he was just like, okay, let's go. I'm ready. And I was falling apart because I was just so surprised. I really didn't know should I be happy or should I be upset? Because I knew what a difference it would make if he didn't have to be on dialysis anymore in the quality of his life. Our lives, for that matter. But I was just terrified of the surgery, that what if it didn't go right and something happened to him. He was in surgery for maybe 2 hours. That was it. He was in and out. They told me he was awake. The kidney was working. Everything was fine. But they wouldn't let me see him till the next day, which was really hard. But then the next day I got back, he was walking around. I couldn't believe the difference. He had color in his face, where before he just was very gray looking. And all of a sudden he had pink cheeks. It was just a huge difference immediately. It wasn't too long after that we ended up making plans to relocate to Maine. So we moved up there. We were hoping to, own a home and start a family, and he didn't have to be on dialysis. So it was really a new chance for us. A total of 3 years after he had the kidney transplant, the kidney failed, and he rejected it and had to go back on dialysis. When we started our family, we never realized that our daughters could get sick. When my oldest daughter was about 2.5, that's when we first learned that she carried the gene. It was just devastating news for me. They had told us that he could not pass this illness on to a son, and that girls wouldn't have kidney failure. After having 3 daughters, then my husband's sister had kidney failure. And we were shocked because we had been told girls don't have kidney failure. And yet here his sister was having kidney failure and having to go on dialysis. My girls may have to face someday that they could have kidney failure later in life. They may not, but it's a possibility. I guess the only thing that I'd have to say is that while the illness has been difficult to deal with for all these years, it's also something that has drawn us as a family together, made us stronger. You know, one of his favorite sayings was, keep the illness in the kidneys, don't let it go to your head.